Hollywood's a marketplace. There's buyers, there's sellers, and sellers have to be responsive and understanding as to what buyers are looking for in many regards. How much thought goes into transmedia as you're developing a property in anticipation of going to your buyers? Or are you really focused on, I believe this is an amazing film, it's an amazing TV show, and if someone agrees at some point down the road, we'll think about the transmedia elements?
I do start just with story. Content is king, and it's easy to get ahead of yourself. It's easy to, and that's why you got to team up with people who can get ahead of yourself while you're thinking about story. So that's why it's good to educate each other about this stuff, because it does take a village for all of these things. But you got to really, transmedia is another way of saying, how do we identify various markets, right? And we're able to get data, hopefully, these days that no one ever shows me about exactly what's going where. And so identifying markets maybe can generate a lead for content, because you want to do things you love in terms of content, but you also want to say, who is this for? Because I'm not just doing it to do a school play in my living room. Mm-hmm. I'm doing it to get an audience and to keep the business healthy. So in as much as using it to thinking of transmedia up front, it would be for me as much about just identifying where a story that I love might go as much as anything else, as opposed to coming up with the Uber world. It takes a village to do that.
Scott, when you guys are designing new franchises, how much are you guys thinking about transmedia at the outset? Are you thinking about it to a large degree? Are you planning for it? Are you spending development time, energy, resources on it? Or again, are you sort of waiting for that first buyer to step up and say, okay, this is a TV show, and then we'll start thinking about these other things?
That's a great question. I agree. I think Bob said it best. I think the most important thing is the creative. What's the story and who are the characters? And what we do really well is we partner and empower with great creators to get that out, because especially with television, at the end of the day, they want the best show for their network, right? And so what's going to get the audience and get it there, and that's the most important thing. But I think in that, they also want to make sure that your show or your property can live 100 episodes, and you can do that. So I think when you're designing that show, you're thinking of a bigger world, unless you're a miniseries or something. But then I think the challenge for us is, once that's going and the writers are empowered and have the tools to lead the way and work with the studio or the distribution of, like, hey, we should be doing this, or what are our opportunities in this? One, also, so it's not, because you don't want it mishandled either. You don't want just to have a comic book or something, a game out there that's not consistent. So I think trying to be a leader and the most really important, being the advocate of the creator. So because he or she needs to be in the writer's room and driving the creative and making sure that their voice is heard when you're talking about those extensions. One, to engage the audience, because you want to get the audience there, because you want to be on the air, so you have the opportunity to transmedia stuff. So I think you're always thinking about it, but I think on the flip of it, I've seen, we've heard too many pitches, and especially in the kids business and even animation, of, hey, this is, the animated show, the character and the toy and this and this and this, and like, that show never sells, and that show never works. So I think, because it really goes back to working with the best creators and getting that show on the air.
Yeah, I think that's actually important, because the traditional old definition of transmedia was creating an IP at the center, and then making a film out of it, making a television show out of it, making a comic book out of it, making a video game out of it. All of those with split narratives, all of those with different timelines, all of those with different creators thinking about the story from that central IP. I think that, the proper definition of transmedia is, again, start, as Bob said, start with that story and let it branch out from there to whatever platform it wants to go on. To answer, that can be a lean back experience, it can be a lean forward experience. However the story is best presented to the viewer, to the audience, that's the most important thing.